Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're having a good evening so far. Thanks for joining us here for our Overwatch Shoutcasting Foundations. This is Mushy Beef, and above me is Lemon Kiwi. We're going to be bringing you some Overwatch Shoutcasting, all of our learning and all of our everything that we've gathered from being in the community and working on casting ourselves. How's it going, Lemon?
Good. Here to learn. Classes in session. Yes, during the OWL, but hey, every minute is for learning. It's 5 o'clock here, but this is totally classroom time, right?
Yeah, it's like the evening classes session, and so definitely don't want to stop learning. Actually, I'm glad I'm done with school, so I'm cool with this kind of school. And so, but anyways, guys. But yeah, thanks for joining us yet again. And how about let's just get right into it, Lemon. How about you tell us, what are we going over today?
Well, of course, you guys saw the title. This is going to be the Shoutcasting Foundations, but let's go into the chapters of what elements or what we're going to be going through today, featuring our lovely Santa Claus Torbjorn on the right. So the chapters consisting of the different broadcast roles, including the skill sets, a caster foundation, so the basics of vocal elements and mechanics, working with your co-caster and creating that relationship, caster preparation, so a checklist of how to prepare before a cast, reading the in-game user interface. So again, this is for beginners to see how to use the interface in Overwatch, then to sort of break down the action in Overwatch, who's going to be casting when, and the topics you can cover during the different points of a game. And also at the very end, how do you get started, and what are some tips and tricks we can give you to jumpstart your career in shoutcasting.
We'll be going over all of that right now, so excited to get into that. So as we're moving to the next part, remember step 0, know your goal, right? And so we want to make sure you guys understand as you're approaching casting, even if you're not a beginner, just remember, come back to this goal. You want to enhance the broadcast by telling the engaging story, showcasing the talent and the action, and at the end of the day, you want to be entertaining, because then if you're not entertaining, people won't really want to listen to you, right? You want to make sure people are having fun when they're spectating.
Well, you hit it right on the head of what the goal is, but let's go through also the different roles that will occur or that exist in the broadcast realm. So of course there is shoutcasting, but let's go over the quick other ones of shoutcasting requires high energy, high game knowledge. But analysts, also the people that are on the analyst desk, are people with high game knowledge, but don't necessarily have to yell and shout and have this crazy amount of energy. So this could be another role that you can apply your game knowledge to. A host as well, if maybe you're more an energy personality type and don't have the intricate knowledge of Overwatch, you can be an Overwatch host and direct the topics through the analyst desk, and also bring that hype in action without necessarily having an immense knowledge base behind it. And also knowing the difference between an observer and a producer in Overwatch. So when you're online, you're mostly going to have to do many of these roles at once. So observing, producing, and even sometimes casting if you're kind of unlucky. But at LAN, there's a difference. So at offline events, or when you go to the event, there'll be different people that do observing and different people that do producing. So observing is simply moving around the camera and what the viewers will see. And the producer is the one that plugs in all the voices, the cameras, and the different observers. So there can be sometimes multiple observers, but usually one producer. So just to keep that in mind. But to go over, let's say you're still dedicated to using your skill set to be a shoutcaster. There are 2 different types of shoutcasting or shoutcasters. There is a play-by-play shoutcaster and a color shoutcaster. So play-by-play guides you through the action as it's occurring on the screen, describing the importance, what you're seeing, and all the details about it. While as the color caster, in between the action, will try and summarize and extract the information and color around the topics, and sometimes even lead a discussion about something about the action or surrounding the action, sometimes about the players, sometimes about off-topic things, but they're there to color around the action.
And for that, that's what we're going to be focusing on today, right? The portion about shoutcasting. And so saw some questions in the chat too. Observer, producer, that will be tomorrow, so we'll have something ready for you guys there. Okay, great. So I guess moving on, caster foundation and vocal elements. Lemon, this is something that I know that you spend a lot of time really figuring out, and as we are working on our duo, something that I know you always have a lot of really great comments on for us to improve on. So why don't you tell us about these?
So on top of having good content, of knowing what you're saying, the in-game knowledge and how you apply it to your casting, there are also some elements in how to change your voice, how you're saying this content that can enhance what you're saying and convey different emotions and storylines on the way you're saying it. Sorry. So I have 3 points here, and we're going to start with the first one: pacing and fluency. Pacing is how fast and how slow you're talking, whereas fluency is the flow. Think of it like a river of your entire content. So if you're in pausing, unintentionally pausing, using a lot of verbal fillers such as like, and those are verbal fillers that affect the fluency and the flow of your saying. And you can adjust your pacing to either towards the action, so you can increase your pacing or slow your pacing to give more emphasis and almost more tension to what you're saying. And also, it's good to kind of change your pacing. If you're losing your train of thought, try and slow down your pacing to catch up on your thought and say things more fluently, which will add to the quality of your content. Because if the viewers can't be confident in what you're saying because you're stuttering and interrupting yourself, or you don't sound like you know what you're talking about, then that affects if they really want to trust what you're saying. So an example of controlled pacing. So you can say something like, take a look at this Reinhardt. He's moving on to the point, and he's got the Earth Shatter ready. See how there's intended pauses in between these things that emphasize the content. So you can slow down your pacing, but you can also ramp up your pacing in different ways to maybe start more action or more tension. Oh, look at this Reinhardt. He's moving on to the point, and he has the Earth Shatter. See, there's different vocal elements such as pacing and fluency that can affect the content of what you're saying and how you're saying it. This flows through also into pitch and inflection. So pitch is how high and how low your voice naturally is, and also inflection is the moderation or how you change that pitch to convey an emotion. So like you just saw me earlier, when something is intense or exciting, you're going to naturally up your pitch. So, oh my God, he's got an Earth Shatter, and see how it like ramps up. And you can also bring down that inflection to have a more serious tone and bring it back down from the action that a color would possibly do to get on a serious note and try to analyze what just happened. So that was a great Earth Shatter, but take a look at how this affected the outcome of the fight and see how I brought it up and bring it back down to a serious tone. So inflections are very important to contrast the content you're saying, make it more interesting and less monotone. So, and also, pitch is very important to conclude and section off the content that you're saying. So for example, to know when your co-caster, or for your co-caster to know when you're done talking, we'll try and feel for how your pitch is inflecting at the very end. So you'll know that when you naturally are done a sentence, you'll have a falling pitch. I am done my sentence now. See, it comes back down. But am I really done my sentence? Then you see a rising pitch is for a question, while a falling pitch is for an end of a sentence. So having these inflections will be able to tell not only your co-caster when you're done talking and for them to pick up on what you just said, but it also sections off your content. So it does your giant content of phrases doesn't sound like one big paragraph without an end to it. So having these falling pitches gives, sections of your content and also lets your caster know when you're done talking. So very important to use those vocal elements, which leads also into energy, emotion, and emphasis. So although there'll be something super exciting happening, and the natural thing to do is to increase your pace, increase your volume, increase your pitch. Oh my God, a shadow. So that can sometimes be very confusing for the viewers. If you have too high of a pitch or too high of pacing, they can sometimes not understand what you're saying. So there are different ways to convey a stressful moment or to stress the importance of a play. This is you can do this by using emphasizing certain words. For example, well, they really need to get this Valkyrie going. What they really need to do is make sure this Valkyrie is able to go off and make sure this Valkyrie stays alive. And you know how much more important what I'm saying is, because I'm emphasizing certain keywords. It'll make the viewers remember that keyword, even if they're not paying attention. This Mercy's got to stay alive. And this emphasis is what really brings importance and stress to the information you're conveying. So using things like pacing, pitch, and emphasis can convey different emotions and stress different parts of your content.
And remember, it's about bringing attention to that important thing. And because there, especially in Overwatch, there's so much happening. So you as a caster, as even just the whole entire production, your goal is to make sure that the audience knows exactly what to look for. And that's where the art comes in, and where these tools are going to be used for in whatever way you feel is the best way to tell the story. So cool. And then I guess when you have those tools, right, and then it leads into some, these are more technical things of mechanics, right? How you would actually interact with your co-caster. So we have some clips here. And for these first two, let's just talk a little bit about first what a handoff and a pickup is. So handoff is when, say, I'm talking through a point and then I'm done talking, and so I'm ending my sentence. That's literally what it is. So if I'm talking through this team fight, like on the clip, you guys can see there's a soldier and he's pushing around the last point. The soldier is going to have to work a little bit harder before he gets tactical visor. So before that, the team will still push as hard as long as they can until they get that. So that
and
was
also
me
notice
finishing.
and also notice the falling pitch that he uses at the end, sort of the inflection of pitches. And if you're able to have a really good falling pitch, it gives a much better indication to your co-caster when to pick it up.
And speaking of pickups, that's just taking the next part of the phrase. So I guess if we were to, even Lemon, jumping in when I was done talking, was because that was the end of my sentence right before. Again, this is just kind of an example, right? So
sorry, that wasn't
no, that's fine. It was a good demonstration of what a pickup is. So then the pickup is, of course, just when the next caster is going to begin talking. So we have this clip here, which also indicates what a setup is as well. So a setup is a specific kind of handoff, is when you're handing off in a way where you're directing the action at a specific thing. So in this next clip, what you're going to see is, I believe it is ZP that hands off to Uber in this. Again, if you guys don't know, just listen for, we're going to watch the clip first, and then we're going to watch through and kind of pause and play and talk through what happens in this clip itself. That is this setup. So a setup, again, directing, it is a handoff that directs towards specific action. So let's go ahead and watch this clip.
Well, the fight is underway, and we're looking at Taimu here once again. Not a lot in his face, doesn't have to worry about the Diva. He has plenty of options, and he connects there with Linkser. The Finns striking deep into last point Nabani.
And Finland managed to catch Spain as they were trying to backpedal there. I don't know if they expected the finish to be so aggressive coming forward, although they should have. Now, the payload is on the final straight. There's a Transcendence available for Zuppe. Wait to see that come out in a Harry Hook tack visor.
This is where Harry Hook has to be deceptive, and he can't throw the tack visor into the Transcendence, but he uses the tack visor early, gets fragged. Fight is underway.
Maybe a little bit late for Zuppe on the response here. Finland are a player down, and now need to make amends. They need to make up the deficit. Linkster up back behind the payload. It's a sound barrier as well from both sides, in fact. Baromas doesn't benefit from it, though. He gets chucked down by time. He gets a little bit close to the beast that he is. Linkster recalls back towards the end of the payload here. Finland are playing at that man advantage, but now it's a 5v5.
And Spain, they have the respawn advantage. This is part of why it's so difficult to get in here. The offense, they have to run a long way to reinforce. The defense, they're right there, so Spain will get a chance to reinforce. Down to...
All right. So that's the clip. I know a lot was happening, but let's just go ahead. We can just do a quick run through. I don't want to take too much time on this, but let's just talk about where was the handoff, right? And again, the handoff is when someone's ending their statement. The pickup is happening when someone picks up the statement. They continue the conversation. But what is so cool about this is that handoffs and pickups are so tight. Like, they're very close to each other. And again, the key one here is when the sound, I think there's a sound barrier that goes off, or Transcendence. Anyways, let's watch it again. We'll pause and play here.
Well, the fight is underway, and we're looking at Taimu here once again. Not a lot in his face, doesn't have to worry about the Diva. He has plenty of options, and he connects there with Linkser. The Finns striking deep into last point Nabani.
So he's just talked about how Finland is making a really good push here for the last point in Nabani. Now Uber can pick up, right? So that's kind of a generic handoff. It's just saying, okay, they look really strong going into this last point. That's the statement, right? So now it's up to Uber to respond.
And Finland managed to catch Spain as they were trying to backpedal there. I don't know if they expected the finish to be so aggressive coming forward, although they should have. Now, the payload is on the final straight. There's a Transcendence available for Zupe. Wait to see that come out in a Harry Hook tack visor.
This is where Harry Hook has to be deceptive, and he can't throw the tack visor in.
So Uber has just pointed out the thing to look for, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later about what is color and play-by-play, the roles. But then, yeah, the Transcendence is the thing to look out for here on the offense.
To the Transcendence, but he uses the tack visor early, gets fragged, the fight is underway.
Maybe.
So ZP has he's finished the color of talking about the setup for the team fight. And he said, there's the early pick onto Fraggy, the fight is underway. Right, that is the setup, and now Uber can go. He knows to go right into the action because of that setup. Okay. So this is what handoffs and pickups are, and what a setup is, which is a subset of a handoff.
Okay, so I guess the next point would be to talk about the difference between a handoff and a setup. They're a little bit different. Setup is more like teeing off the action for the play-by-play to take off. Something like, and there's the tack visor like you just saw in the clip. Something subtle for the play-by-play to jump on immediately.
Yeah.
So let's say you're in the middle of color and sometimes a random ultimate comes out like a Dragon Blade, something huge that you need to give off to the play-by-play. You can set it up like, and here's a Dragon Blade, or take a look at this insert ultimate here. So it's a quick tee off for the play-by-play to get straight into the action.
Exactly. And that's what is so strong. If you can get really good at setups and then the pickup on the other side of the co-caster, then it is just super fluid in terms of you being on the same mindset. And it is really difficult to continue that same chain of thought. So let's jump right into the next thing. So for mechanics, we're rounding it out here. Piggybacking. Sounds weird. This is a term we learned from Frostcarin, who is a caster for the LPL in League of Legends. So they're LCS over, this is the Chinese League of Legends scene. And if you guys watch League of Legends, if I name Riot Kobe and just kind of his interjections, I think you know what a piggyback is. This is a interjection that increases the hype, normally done by color caster. Again, we'll talk about the roles, color versus play-by-play more later. But the intention is that you're adding hype to it without necessarily distracting. So this clip is hot off the press. I think it was a little bit warm. Lemon was wearing the oven mitts when she gave me this clip to throw in in the deck today, because it was from just today's games between NYXL and Los Angeles Valiant. Let's just play it.
With a Valkyrie here, and it's going to be Seagull actually sniping the Riptire there of Envy. That's a huge kill. You could have potentially saw that Riptire come and take Arc out of the sky, but NYXL turning up here. 17 seconds left. Agility's trying to save his support. Unbelievable! That's the kill on Unko. Huge play from Meko. This guy is doing
so great. So I don't know if you guys caught it. What was the piggyback here? It was Uber going, unbelievable! So good. But yeah, so what he's done is they've in this situation, man is actually talking through the action in a color perspective, and then Uber is seeing the play happening as well. The fact that Meko gets out alive is incredible, or is unbelievable, as he says.
Oh, and on top of not only maybe adding to the action that is already going on, as you've already highlighted, sometimes there'll be a lot going on and you can interject and maybe add information that's going on that you want the play-by-play to maybe just catch. And this can be kind of risky because, you know, you want to leave your play-by-play to have this train of thought and maybe as the color add on to it later. But you can be like, if there's a Dragon Blade going off or something and your play-by-play is all over it, you could be like, and there's a trans. So like Transcendence comes out to completely nullify it. So you got to be careful with piggybacking in terms of maybe having more than just an O or an ah, because some people see it as an interruption and it can sometimes disrupt the flow of what they're saying because now they have to consider what you just said. So very good partners are able to use piggyback very, very effectively. And maybe for newer people, they might see it as an interruption or it might disrupt their train of thought. So just make sure you discuss with that person if that's something you like to do. Yeah.
Because it can be distracting and it can throw off your co-caster like you were alluding to. So, cool. So, as we're, again, mechanics, this is what we wanted to talk about that. And then, just moving on, working with your co-caster, right? So, we're talking about the importance of, for piggybacking, you don't want to distract your co-caster, and it's part of a larger idea that we want to make sure all of you are keeping in mind, is that at the end of the day, you and your co-caster are one voice or one storyteller. So you should be and need to be discussing before the cast your roles, strengths, weaknesses, and your experience, because you want to get to know each other and put yourself in a position for success for both of you to sound really good. Okay, and the trust, it's about building trust with your co-caster. And one of the ways you can see certain casters not trusting each other, how that manifests is they step over on each other's toes. They don't listen to each other. They're talking past each other. One is hogging the mic more than the other. Or there could be, people like stealing it away from the other person as they're finishing their topic. All of these things don't sound good, and to avoid that, and the way to do that is build trust with the co-caster, build a relationship with them, and ultimately, it starts with, again, having this open discussion, making sure you're on the same page, and that being on that same page will help open a dialogue for feedback. And at the end of the day, because we want to be one person, you're working towards building a partnership, and that is really what is entertaining.
And think about maybe a lot of branded casters in Overwatch and CSGO, anybody. You enjoy a pair of casters because of how well they bounce between each other. And that's because they spend countless hours casting together, getting to know how each other hand off and pick up, getting to know each other's styles, and ultimately having fun with that person, which you can very much tell if two people have never casted together or if people have been casting together for years. It opens up that opportunity to joke around, be more comfortable, be more laid back, and don't ever feel like you have to compete with the person you're co-casting with. You want to try and build a story together to entertain the broadcast and all the other goals that we said before. So if you notice that, and of course at the beginning of your casting, you're going to experiment with a lot of people, but when you find that person that you naturally gel with, that you mesh with very well, that you bounce off each other's ideas, you have the same train of thought, whatever it is, stick to that person, practice with them more, because it's easier to build on, to improve on things when you have the same person that can work with you on those things.
Yeah, and because that's how you unlock the next level of casting. So, guys, let me know in chat. I'm having some. Looks like my bit rate is really struggling right now. So keep me posted if there's anything that you guys miss. I'm recording it as well on my side, so hopefully we'll be able to have a good recording of this. So okay, so after you've built your partnership, and this is something that you're going to continue trying to do, you need to prepare for your broadcast. So how do you do that?
So I'm pretty nitpicky when it comes to having a checklist of things I like to know and do before a cast or a match even starts. And this is not also 5 minutes before a cast. This can be the day before, whatever. Number one, learn what the format of the match or the tournament is. There's been countless times where I'm in a cast and I hear someone say, or I'm watching a cast and someone says, is this a best of 3? Is this a best of 5? What's the score again? I don't know what the next map is. I don't know what this, or just if you don't know, or even not knowing the prize pool, whatever the detail might be, it looks much more professional if you look informed about what you're actually casting in terms of the format. So is it map veto or map preset? Make sure you're aware of what the map selection is before, if it is that, and how the veto system works, or anything about the format that you maybe are not knowledgeable on. Sorry. Next one is team or player and team name pronunciations. This is much of a struggle, even for me today. Sometimes I really suck at pronouncing some people's team names or player names. And it's also awkward because maybe the co-caster has their own pronunciation of what a player's name is. And sometimes there's some really janky alphabet-looking names that come up. And sometimes it's best to sit with your co-caster and figure out what it is, what they think it is, or if you have the opportunity to talk to that player, ask them how they pronounce their name, because not only does it look kind of funny and awkward trying to figure out mid-cast what it is, but sometimes it can be insulting to the player because it could be their last name, could be their nickname, could be something that means a lot to them. So you want to make sure you get that pronunciation down. And also the 3 seconds you spend in your mind trying to figure out how to pronounce it in the mid of your play-by-play, that's 3 seconds you're not focusing on the game. So that's something you can get out of the way. Also, background info and roster information, if this is available to you. Sorry. Oh, this cold. What was I going to say? Background info. So a lot of the times you might hear a caster say, I don't know this player. I don't know this team. So that kind of subtracts from the story you're trying to tell. You're almost making it seem like these guys are nobodies when it's just you not being knowledgeable. So if you can avoid saying, I don't know these teams, I don't know these players by doing a little bit of research before your match, even messaging the players, asking them, what's your experience, what's your roles, little questions that you would like to add to the broadcast. Remember, this is about highlighting the talent that will be on the match. So if you're able to tell that story better, find a way to do that research. Because like I said, it can come off-putting or insulting by saying you don't know these players, by insinuating that they're not known, or it kind of makes you look silly and not knowledgeable as a caster when you don't know who you're casting over. So if you're able to get that information, then do so. Next would be mic and quality check. So making sure that in Overwatch especially, you're going to be spectating with your keyboard a lot. And most people will have a mechanical keyboard, which is, very, 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 I just clacked to give an example. I just typed into the thing. But this can be extremely distracting for the viewers and your co-caster and whoever's listening to this in the production area to hear this clacking. So please be aware and talk to your co-caster about sound checks to see if your keyboard is getting picked up. And anything else like fans, any noises in your background, roommates, whatever. Make sure that you're able to control what your mic sensitivity is in Discord or whatever sound program you're using. And camera check as well. If you're required to be on camera, try and dress somewhat appropriately, depending on how serious your cast is. If you cast a tournament, you might want to dress more nicely. If you're just casting a scrim, then maybe it doesn't matter as much. And keep your room clean. I'm not the best example, but you don't want to leave all kinds of stuff that all over your room because it makes you look bad and it gives people distractions to pay attention to in your background instead of your face or what you're saying. So if you can dress for the job you want and have your room clean for the job you want, then that's what matters. And then finally, keeping notes. So I'm pretty crazy about notes. I think this is my thing. So you can have like a giant binder where you can keep map scores, any notes about gameplay comp, any notes about gameplay, composition, players, anything you want to keep note of. And most importantly, the scores, the scores throughout the map. So this will be extremely important to see, to keep yourself updated in the series, because it's very annoying when the series is over and the casters think it's still going, or the casters think it's over when it's still going. It's very like misinformation you're giving to the viewers. So you want to keep them updated also throughout the series, what the scores were if they just are new to the stream. So especially keep notes on the maps and the scores. And if possible, anything else that you can add to the analyst desk after.
And there's also a good point in chat as well, knowing about the tournament, knowing about the keeping track of who's performing well, what the score was on the maps. It makes sure that the audience knows that you are taking it seriously and that you are knowledgeable. Trust also with the audience is very important too. If you're saying a lot of things and having to backtrack and saying, oh, actually that wasn't right. Yeah, I knew it wrong. I didn't know it was right. You get like no margin of error with Twitch chat, right? Twitch chat is already going to be freaking out at you and hating on you, but especially if you call an ultimate wrong or a hero name wrong or a player name wrong. So again, don't let that discourage you. But the point is, put yourself in the best chance to have success. Make sure you know what is going on and that you can communicate. So, by the way, you can't see this, but when you're saying just for the job you want, you were in a really nice sweater. I'm not just wearing a t-shirt. I had to let people know that I'm wearing an Ana shirt. So it's Overwatch related. It is the job I want, and so that's why. So we're doing that.
Yeah, I was like, dude, since I'm making that point, I should probably clean my room-ish and wear something nice. But I'm like, I'm going to do half of both and lead by example-ish. But you guys know what I mean, that
looks good.
Wear something half decent while you're casting. Because I always like to go full out and wear like full business. So people, like, I look more important than I really am. And I think that like adds to, whoa, she looks nice. Or he looks like spiffy. and it just adds to the quality and your professionalism. So why not? If you got something, I'm not saying a tux, but something not janky is preferable.
We're setting the bar low, but it's the, you guys know, you guys get it. Cool. And so again, moving on to, so now that you've prepped for your broadcast, it's important to know how to read the in-game UI. So I won't spend super long on this, because if you guys have watched any professional Overwatch tournament or done any casting on your own, done any spectating, you guys know most of these things already. So very quickly, status bar up top, you read the heroes. There will be the player name. It'll be the ultimate charge. It'll be whether they have an ultimate up. And then for control or hybrid or assault, whatever, whoever's on attack will be indicated by whoever has the filled in color. And then if the point flips here, it'll show that the center C will be filled in with the other color, right? So these things it's more intuitive in a sense. So just go and when you're playing, when you're doing your observing, notice what is on the upper bar. The new thing here is the status bar. Everything in the center is the same as if you were playing the game yourself, but then the status bars of the heroes, that's something new if you've never seen observer mode or never bothered to look up there during a broadcast. And then, of course, you have the what's on screen. You can see all the heroes. And definitely recommendation as well is what we didn't have for this screenshot, but what you guys should do is make sure to turn on health bars. And we have the other video where we talk about Overwatch observing. I show you exactly in the menu where it is. Just search for turn on health bars, make a hotkey for it, turn it on, especially when you're in free cam. It can tell you, is someone narrowly escaping? Is someone absolutely going to win the team fight? Right? If it's someone with a tiny sliver of health versus someone with full health, then you know not to build up the hype too much. You pretty much know how that's going to end. And then finally, the kill feed. Person on the left is killing the person on the right, and that arrow will sometimes be an icon to tell you what the way that they did it. So anything with an arrow will be the primary fire, and then anything with a filled in arrow. So if it's like a red arrow here from Roadhog 2 killing Roadhog 1, that means it was done with a critical strike or a headshot there. So a little bit more information to know about, but that is the in-game UI.
And also that you get the basics of what everything means on this. It's important to kind of like your driver's ed when they tell you to check your mirrors every 5 seconds. You want to check this top bar as often as possible for many different reasons. Whereabouts are they in their ultimate? And hero swaps occur very, very subtly. And this is an extremely important thing to bring up while you're casting. Why did someone swap that hero? And then this could be a topic on its own leading into discussion. And if you're not looking at your top bar often, you're going to miss someone getting an ultimate, therefore when they're going to be executing it, and you'll miss hero swaps and you'll be confused. Well, I didn't know there was a McCree in this match. What? So it makes you, if you're not paying attention, then you're not know what's happening. And same thing in kill feed. It's not just to read the kill feed. Of course, you could be like, wow, triple kill, whatever. But also this helps you keep track of how many people are alive and what the swing of the team fight is. So don't just look at the kill feed to see who's dead. Look at the kill feed to see how many people are left. Is it a 6v3? Is it a 6v1? And this will be able to tell you when you switch into cleanup, the cleanup discussion, or sort of when the play-by-play knows to switch into color is when the team fight is done. And this will be indicated when it doesn't have to be when the last person's dead, but when the team fight is won. And using the kill feed and looking at the gameplay will be able to tell you the swing of the team fight.
And even within that, when you're looking, when everything is so busy and happening, right? If you're keeping track of who has the ultimate and you hear it happen, then it can tell you like who it could be, right? So in the situation, you have Roadhog on the blue side has the whole hog. Roadhog on the red team is not even close. So if you hear a whole hog, then you can immediately know that it's from the blue team.
All right, so this will move on. So once you're comfortable with the user interface, we can now start breaking down the action of Overwatch. So in the general setting of an Overwatch game, you're going to have your pre-game and your introduction discussion, and then at the very end, your post-game and your conclusion. So we'll go over maybe what are some common sense things you want to bring up in the introduction, but we want to go over this sort of tri-step or the 3 main steps that we believe consist of everything that you're going to cover. So the setup, We'll go into detail what all this means, but the setup is preparing for the action, and this will be done by the color caster mostly. Team fight, so when the team fight is actually commencing, there's action going on, the color hands off, and the play-by-play takes over the action of the team fight. Then, once the cleanup, or once the team fight is pretty much won, then you're able to switch back into breakdown. So this is summarizing and extracting information. And then once the breakdown is done, you can reset up for the upcoming team fight. So you're going to follow this setup, team fight, breakdown, setup, team fight, breakdown pretty close most of the time. And we'll introduce you guys to clips so you can see what that sort of looks like. But let's go into the next slide of what will consist a pregame and a postgame discussion. So in pregame, you're going to, of course, if there is a host, if you got a really high-end broadcast and you get a lovely host that can do this for you, then cool. But most of the time, maybe in smaller broadcasts, the casters will be having that role of doing introductions for the stream. So this will include of course, introducing yourself and your co-caster. That'll be number one. But also introducing the teams and the bracket. If it's a tournament setting, introduce the bracket. Give any information about the match in terms of the roster, the play styles, the picks, whatever information that you've collected through your research about the players would be fed into this introduction, maybe along with even something like a key player matchup. If there's two really good tracers on either team, let's say Soon and Silbio, that weird
CBLB.
tracer.
SBB.
That one. SBB. So we've seen that today in OWL, how they'll compare Tracer v Tracer or Diva v Diva. And these key player matchups can lead to very interesting discussion in the introduction without even seeing the gameplay yet. And also this is a time to give expectations and maybe any predictions, although predictions could get a little risky. I would maybe not tread into that area to insult any teams if you aren't completely knowledgeable about either team, but just setting some expectations. You can even, if you don't know anything about these teams, you can start BSing some things like these are some really close, this is going to be a really close match between these two teams. They're very evenly skilled. We've got amazing players on both these teams, and I'm looking forward to the action. See, I know nothing about the players, but I could say that to probably any match. And even if it turns out to be false at the end, it was a stomp, then you act surprised. But you want to make the viewers anticipate the match coming up. Don't say something like, I don't know, we'll see, I guess. That's not very exciting.
Yeah.
And then I guess we'll go into the post game. So kind of a lot of common sense things here, going over the final scores of each map, kind of try and pretend that viewers are new to the stream and that they came in halfway. You want to update the series and the scores as much as they can. Maybe highlight, these are analytical points. So if you have an analysis person there, they can cover this section as well. But let's say the casters are have the job of doing the post-game analysis. You'll want to re-review the key player matchups you talked about in the introduction, or maybe any expectations that were met or disappointed like the Outlaws versus Fuel match. You can talk about how that was a stomp and that was not what you expected at all of the Fuel to do. Kind of examples like that, and main weaknesses and strengths of the team. But any analysis notes that you took during the game, this is a great place to apply for it.
Sure. And again, both of these, the reason why the pre and post game kind of like they mirror each other a little bit, because it's things that you are setting up in the beginning, and then ultimately it's about revisiting those topics, right? You are saying what were the things to watch for, what is the thing in the intro or the roster, the playstyle that you anticipate being key going into the game. And then afterwards, again, revisiting it is important as well, because you made those assertions as an analyst, as a host. What was the result of it, and why did that happen?
Right. So this leads into our next discussion about the setup. So this is preparing for the action. So Mushu, tell us how you usually like to set up the action.
So this is a continuation again of the ideas that were also in the pregame and also the postgame as well. But this is now we are in game and discussing those kind of topics. So you'll be discussing as the picks come through. Maybe in the pregame you said, this team really likes to run dive, and this team really likes to run death ball. Do those hero compositions end up being that way? That's a discussion point, possible discussion point. And then the playstyles or strategies. What about as you're setting up? And again, this can happen even after a team fight. You're now setting up possibly for the next team fight. What was that last playstyle? What was that last strategy? Are they not having Tracer flank? That would be an interesting strategy, and maybe arguably would not be the right way. But then it's all about the setup, about anticipating you're setting the stage for the action while anticipating the outcome. So again, other examples, positioning. You can discuss positioning, and then you can discuss what ultimates are available. And so there are names that are coined for the combination of ultimates. This is all about setup and setting an expectation for what the outcome could be. So again, the Big Bang is a classic one, or you have a Graviton Surge and a Dragon Blade. Those are all classic combinations. My favorite one is probably Space Jam, which is the Graviton Surge plus the Meteor Strike. And so just because that's the best name.
And this is a good equation to use. I know a lot of people are good at stating, positioning, or noticing a hero swap or noticing what's going on. But then the +1 is what are you anticipating out of that particular thing you're noticing? If they're set up on top Earls on defense or Route 66, what about it? So now anticipating the outcome will be that the offense now have to reach that high ground, or we'll have to force them down from it. So setting the stage is noticing what is interesting, the hero, the strategy, the setup, the positioning, the ultimates. Okay, he's got a Dragon Blade, what of it? Well, this is going to put the fight in a huge advantage for his team because we've seen how great, blah, blah, blah. So don't just notice the ultimate, the positioning, add to it by saying why it's important.
And the reason why you want to say why it's important is because then you're, again, anticipating the action for when it actually does go down. And when you're in the team fight, Lemon, how do we talk about that?
So into this next slide here, so whatever your color sets you up with, whatever he tees you up with, tease as in golf, tease, that sounded, I don't know why I thought of the other one, but the team fight or the play-by-play will now take the information you provided and go off of it in the action. So for example, if your color notices an interesting hero pick, your play-by-play will want to bounce off of that and watch that person. For example, Mushu says something interesting about this Widowmaker, and he's got a really good position. Take a look at it. I can't, as a play-by-play, be like, but this Tracer though, or hey, but this Sombra up here, like it looks really off if you're not playing with your co-caster. So you got to trust your color person to set you up and for you to follow that storyline. Remember, the goal is to tell a story. So you want to flow with this river. So whether it's noticing a hero comp or a certain hero pick, follow through with the hero. If it's a certain positioning and they notice how important it is, you need to follow through on how they're going to overcome whatever the setup is. If there's an ultimate, like Mushu noticed, oh, he's got a Dragon Blade, we got to look out for when he's going to use it. As a play-by-play, I got to jump on that person and ramp up the tension. Oh, he's getting into position. He's coming up behind the supports, and there's I gotta go off of whatever the color is saying. And there's ways, of course, to transition to a different topic, but you gotta trust your co-caster to give you the action or give you the important juicy bits to go off of.
And because then it also shows if you're responding to what the setup was, it continues the cohesiveness of the broadcast, of the storytelling, but also it is a lot more clear to the audience for what the discussion points are and what you should be looking for. And so that's why it's important to be in sync. You want to listen 100% to what the setup is, and then following the action should be following that same thing. And of course, it goes both ways. It's not just that the play-by-play needs to listen to the color, but then as the play-by-play does the analysis, it's about following up on those things. And then we'll talk about that in the next section.
And also, this goes into the second part of team fights. So you want to focus on whatever the color is saying, but also, let's say there's 12 ultimates ready on your top bar. A lot of issues with new casters and even experienced casters is what to put focus in. what kind of story do you want to create? So of course, this is up to opinion, whatever you think is important. Let's say as a caster, you're a tank main. You might have more knowledge about how the tank should play. If you're a support main, you'll notice something that the support is doing. Whatever story you want to do, trust us, you can do whatever you want. This is just a sort of sorted ultimates based on maybe importance or hype levels, whatever you want to call it, and also what they're actually doing. So massive damage, of course, it's self-explanatory, but crowd control ultimates, this will be ones that trap, stun, snare, and ultimately can be paired up with another damage ultimate to usually result in a huge team wipe. So these need to be heavily watched, especially Gravitons. We all know how pretty much any ultimate can be paired with that for an easy 5k or whatever. And also support ultimates. These include healing and stat buffs, including vision and damage buffs, whatever it is. These are extremely important to extend the fight. So if you choose to focus on the support ultimates, you need to focus on how important they are to extend the fight and get resurrects or increase the damage and give vision. There's a lot of stories that can be told about the support ultimates. And going into the damage, however, you see that I've divided into 3 tiers. So this is completely subjective and based on opinion. But of course, you want to give your observer the best shot at having the best action in first person for the viewers to see. So when there's a lot of ultimates, you want to focus on something like a Dragon Blade or a Riptire, Bastion configuration tank. These are ultimates that are usually huge and will get a lot of kills most of the time, or have the potential to be team wiping. And even other ones like Reaper, Soldier, Pharah, they have it. You can tell in their positioning when they're going to be ready. And you can almost tell by the positioning how effective it might be as well. Or when the shields go down, when the Reinhardt and a D.Va's out of the way, then that's when a Soldier or a Reaper can come in and be huge. And there's other tiers. Self-destruct is also one that can be huge or can be not. Self-destructs can be used to be zoning, just get your mech back. So that's why I put it in the tier 2. But also self-destruct's another thing that can create a great story of how it's being used. And this follows the same trend of these are all different ultimates that you can focus on and create a storyline of how important it is to change the tide of the team fight. And I have tier 3 where these are kind of ultimates that aren't really life-changing. So if you got 12 ultimates on the board, you'll want to focus on your tier 1 ultimates, or even create your own list of what you think you like to watch more or talk about more. But of course, if there's only one ultimate out of 12 people, you'll want to focus on how that particular person is going to use it to give his team the slight advantage. But Dragon Blades, Riptires, and things like that, those are huge and they're going to be something your observer is going to focus on regardless if you're casting over it or not. So might as well cast over something that's going to have the most action for the viewers.
And because those are the ones that are impactful too. And even just we talk about discussion with your co-caster, but also talking with your production team too is very important. Even at the professional level, know that even chatted with Uber and Jason or Alchemist, saying that it's give and take both ways. That they trade ideas and they almost definitely VOD review together and understand, all right, what is it that, based on a storyline, how much should we be listening to 100% and watching 100% of what the caster is talking about versus the observer being the one that is directing the attention. So it goes both ways as well. Again, the whole production team is working together on that and having an understanding. A list like this is really good if you have, if you approach someone and say, this is kind of how I approach looking at these ultimates. What do you think about that? Then you start getting into a discussion to where you are starting to get on the same page.
And also that if there's a lot of ultimates, don't try and name everything and cover everything that's going on. This is where trust in your co-caster is so crucial. As play-by-play, it's better to expand and be as knowledgeable as possible and great about one situation than bounce between 12 different ultimates and the viewers are like overwhelmed with the amount of content you're trying to feed them. Mm-hmm. So this is where your trust in your co-caster comes in and where the breakdown can sort of recap things that the play-by-play missed.
And speaking of recapping things that the play-by-play missed, let's talk about the breakdown. So we're keeping those 4 items that the play-by-play, again, was continuing from the setup from the color. And so now we have all those 4 things. We don't have parallel paths because on the breakdown, you have to, as the color caster, extract the most significant information. What is the takeaway? What was the key thing? Because even if the play-by-play caster didn't catch something, this is the time to bring it in. There may be something that happened off screen. maybe a tank or a healer was staying narrowly alive and was the reason why everyone was able to stay healed up on the point because of that support dodging out the Widowmaker shots. If that's something that's significant to that team fight, then you bring that in. And so this is that moment where you're able to confirm and close off and package up nicely, tie a little bow on that team fight and say, this was what was significant.
And so it encompasses almost a summary, the extraction of information that the play-by-play said, and also maybe an addition of information that the play-by-play missed. So, like you've already mentioned, all the important stuff that happened and why it turned in that team's favor.
Great.
Which leads us into maybe a summary of what we just talked about, which is the next slide. Just to quickly go over what you just learned. So the pregame and the postgame, it's either the knowledge you have before the match and then the knowledge you learn throughout the game presented during those times. And then the 3 steps that will repeat each other is the setup. So teeing up the play-by-play for the action, setting up your expectations and anticipating what's going to happen based on what you know. The team fight, following that storyline, almost like set up as a preface and the team fight is the book. So it follows through with what your color just fed you into the action, and trying to focus on as much of the action and the ultimates and the craziness. You hone in on something and you focus on it. Breakdown then either summarizes the team. You can either summarize the team fight, extract the important information, maybe go over something that was missed that was important to that team fight. So you'll usually follow the setup, team fight, breakdown, setup, team fight, breakdown many, many, many times, even sometimes many times through a single team fight, because we all know that Overwatch team fights can be 5-10 minutes long even, or never ending. The entire game is one giant team fight. So it's important to get to know as a play-by-play when the action is done and when the color caster should come in and fill a little bit of time, because you don't want that play-by-play to do everything.
Exactly. So now that we know the understanding of this 3 cycle that Lemon has been talking about, let's go ahead and check out an example of that. So I have teed up for you guys. We're using teed up again. You got me saying it now.
We're really into golfing.
Do you golf?
Nope.
I can
never.
I feel like I've only gone to a driving range once, and then I can like barely hit the golf ball off the tee. Just like piddles off sometimes, and I'm just like sad.
We're only good at teeing off and casting. Gotcha.
Feels bad.
Feels bad.
But anyways, we have this great example here of play-by-play in color. This is traditional pairing, and so this is going to be Monty and Doa for the Overwatch World Cup group stages. And so let's just go ahead and watch it first and listen to what the casters are talking about. We'll just play it through, no pauses.
Italy with a couple ultimates to use at least. Cherry's going in, trying to follow up that self-destruct, zoning out Horthic. There's the Primal Rage. Cherry's knocking him away. Has to deal with a couple of the DPS, but Addicted pretty low as well. Self-destruct coming in now for Portugal. Doesn't catch anybody. Mausaso went down a little bit earlier, so Italy can continue the attack right now. There's the Transcendence for Portugal.
It was held on to for quite some time, and Horthic attempting to stay alive here on the flank, but they're dropping the beat right now. Support ults for both teams.
Yeah, Nisa had his back yet again. Link on the run for just a moment. He can heal up and rejoin the fight. Has to deal with Kyler, though, in that Diva suit, and looks like Portugal finally stabilizing once more.
Sort of an inevitability right there. Yes, there were some decent pushes from Italy, but given that Portugal had such an insane advantage with all their ultimates on the defense, holding on to that Transcendence, Italy gonna have potentially something to work with here, though.
Okay, great. So, yeah, sorry about the starters in the video. There's something going on with my internet, but hopefully it is still, the most important part is you guys can hear what they're talking about on this broadcast. So, and we watched it all the way through. You guys have heard them hand off back and forth. And so let's go ahead and just walk through quickly. So Doa starts out with play-by-play.
Italy with a couple ultimates to use at least. Cherry's going in, trying to follow up that self-destruct, zoning out Horthic. There's the Primal Rage. Cherry's knocking him away. Has to deal with a couple of the DPS, but Addicted pretty low as well. Self-destruct coming in now for Portugal. Doesn't catch anybody. Mausaso went down a little bit earlier, so Italy can continue the attack right now. There's the Transcendence for Portugal.
So Doa ends up handing off right after this as well. You can hear Monty start. I'll play it.
Held on to.
Yeah, so Monty picks up from there. So it's not a very, not maybe not the most obvious handoff, but what Doet has done here is you can hear him talking about very specific parts of the team fight, like where the self-destruct is coming from. What does that mean for the team? So the Transcendence comes out now, and he feels like this is a good spot to throw it because Transcendence coming out is going to be, you kind of know how the fight's going to go, that there's no one that's going to die for the side of the team that has the Transcendence. So then Monty picks up here, and he has a bit of a breakdown, or breakdown from the previous fight, which is that this Transcendence was held onto, and now he's going to set up into the next fight.
For quite some time, and Horthic attempting to stay alive here on the flank, but they're dropping the beat right now. Support ults for both teams.
Yeah, Nisa had his back.
So Monty's just saying that, look, this is the fight basically restarting. It's resetting. Both support ultimates from both sides are coming out. And then Doa picks back up.
Yet again, Link on the run for just a moment. He can heal up and rejoin the fight. Has to deal with Kyler, though, in that Diva suit. And looks like Portugal finally stabilizing once more.
Sort of an inevitability.
Yeah, so then Doa ties it up there. The offense fizzles out because of the reset, and then the any progress the attackers made is undone as the Transcendence and the defense being able to reinforce was able to just push back the attackers. They regroup and then they try it again later. So Monty just finishes it off with the breakdown.
Right there. Yes, there were some decent pushes from Italy, but given that Portugal has
depending on what you want to go with, either for your own preference or whatever your co-caster feels comfortable with, there are some casters that like to have defined roles, so only doing the breakdown and setups and the color around it, and some people only like to talk about the action and will solely do play-by-play. However, there is because Overwatch has these fights that end and start, and sometimes fights are very, very long, which is exhausting for the play-by-play. You might want to try hybrid pairing casting, which just means exchanging color and play-by-play roles. So the color will do play-by-play and the play-by-play will do color, where we have a clip on what that's like compared to more stationary roles.
All right, and we're starting it now.
But on the point, bit of a back cap attempt here. It's going to be Lisa just trying to draw Spain away. And look how effective that was. He does go down, but Spain have to retreat from the high ground.
They had to retreat, but unfortunately they weren't able to capitalize. Taimu got really low and had to back out in the middle of his tactical visor. And when you're running away, you're not shooting the enemy team. So yes, he didn't get picked off, and yet it didn't really matter. He was out of the fight, and that was good enough for the Spaniards.
Yeah, the fact that Linkser actually gets one tick on that point, though, purely from his back cap attempts, it could be a little bit worrying. A furrow on the brow of Spain, perhaps, but there's a minute 33 left, and Finland have got to go.
The sound barrier's in. Taimu coming in off the flank, looking for targets, not finding them yet. Meanwhile, Toxican, defensive blade is out, looking to clean up here and on the point. A lot of pressure on him, but it doesn't matter. Able to D-Mech the Diva, ends up falling. Very even back and forth against Promos, holding its fur.
Oh, the boys are back in Spain. The reinforcements really hit their mark there. Finland was so preoccupied with the rest of Spain up on the stairs that they didn't see the combo coming up from behind them. Dak and Bromas really got in their face.
All right, great. So I guess just walking through again, let's do the same exercise. So first, Uber starts out with the play-by-play. He's commenting about how there's a back cap attempt from Finland in there, getting up to a tick.
Doesn't have the Transcendence, but on the point, bit of a back cap attempt here. It's going to be Lisa just trying to draw Spain away, and look how effective that was. He does go down, but Spain have to retreat from the high ground.
They had to retreat, but unfortunately...
So he's just talking about how Spain had to retreat from the high ground, and so it was worth there for Finland. Then ZP has a response to that. He has a breakdown of this last action.
Unfortunately, they weren't able to capitalize. Taimu got really low and had to back out in the middle of his tactical visor. And when you're running away, you're not shooting the enemy team. So yes, he didn't get picked off, and yet it didn't really matter. He was out of the fight, and that was good enough for the Spaniards.
Yeah.
So then ZP is saying, well, they just survived the Taimu tactical visor, so that's worth for Finland. Sorry, that's worth it for Spain because they survived the Finnish Taimu tactical visor. And then Uber responds as well.
The fact that Linkser actually gets...
And this is now set up into the next team fight.
One tick on that point, though, purely from his back cap attempts. It could be a little bit worrying. A furrow on the brow of Spain, perhaps. But there's a minute 33 left, and Finland have got to go.
Boom. So this is another great setup. Right. This is a handoff that is a setup from Uber that goes into ZP's play-by-play.
Bear is in. Taimu coming in off the flank. Looking for targets, not find them yet. Meanwhile, Toxican, defensive blade is out. Looking to clean up here and on the point. A lot of pressure on him, but it doesn't matter. Able to demech the D.Va. Ends up falling. Very even back and forth against Promos, holding its fur.
Oh, the boys are back in Spain. The reinforcements really...
So ZP finishes a play-by-play, and then throws it back to Uber.
hit their mark there. Finland was so preoccupied
So
with the rest of Spain
kind
up
of
on the
like
stair.
we've already summarized before, some people like to have designated roles, and some people like to have a more back and forth during the team fight, because like kind of like you saw a reset and then the action happened right away, so it didn't give time to color to kind of, you have to jump back into the play-by-play. So this is where hybrid casting has an advantage, because you can, if both casters are comfortable with doing both roles, then you can have a really nice exchange. But then this is where maybe sometimes the structure can be at risk, because now you got to remember where you are. Are you in the setup? Are you in, of course, play-by-play, you know when that is, but you got to make sure you break down and you set up the fight that's going to be happening. Although it'll be sometimes very brief. Like, for example, the setup that Uber had at one point was just a quick, and there's a sound barrier, they got to go in, or there's this much time left, they got to go in. It doesn't have to be an in-depth setup, as long as you're able to hand off something for the play-by-play to go into.
Right.
So it can be super brief, like, look at this Dragon Blade. Sometimes something will come out of nowhere, like a Dragon Blade, an EMP, whatever it is. You can use a very brief sentence linker like that to tee up your play-by-play.
Yeah, and the reason why we're showing this is, and why we're talking about hybrid pairing, is because you can get away from the thought that it is only one person who it has that role, right? So you can, depending on the flow, you can give this a shot. But first, it's better to understand, and we're going to have suggestions for when you guys get started. I definitely recommend getting started on one role first, but this is something to explore later on.
Which leads us into our final slide of how do you get started for casting. And I'll let Mushu talk about his very awesome and amazing project of Broadcast.gg.
Aw, thanks, Layman. But yeah, thanks, Layman. I was just in Texas, so got a little Texas in me, I guess. So of course, hopefully everyone here is already in the Broadcast.gg Discord. But what we do there is the main project right now is something called Scrim Nights. But anyways, it is a way to get practice, find scrims to cast, find partners to cast with, find producers to cast with, or if you're a producer, then you can produce and do the observing for a casting pair. And the most important part is that when you're trying to improve, you need to put in hours and put in reps, but then also get feedback on that so you can improve. So that whole cycle of the learning is what we're trying to build this community to support. And of course, we also have recording and streaming instructions for how to set up OBS. We have one of our resident experts, Pimp in the Crib. He built up this great broadcast package that will make it a lot easier for people to get started in observing in Overwatch and producing and streaming. And hopefully you guys have better internet than I do, because my stream health is just atrocious right now. I don't know exactly why. So, but anyways, we have all that information for learning and that whole cycle of getting better and putting in the time. That's what we're building the community to do. And of course, we have some great pros as well. We have Uber, Shouts, Froskeren from League, as we mentioned before, and who else? Pyrotechnics is also doing, and Gilfrost is out
Jamerson.
there. Yeah, Game with Storm, Hurix, all these guys who have a lot of experience, be able to post in and get feedback from everybody. So, and speaking of the pros.
Oh, well, yeah, it's just, yeah, to touch upon that last point, it's been how open you think the professionals are. You usually are super intimidated to get help from these people, but I've already met with probably the majority of them to either get feedback or actually get to practice with them, which is just a privilege to be able to work with them, because then you build a relationship with the people that can maybe even recommend you somewhere one day. So having not only the expertise, but all the resources. It's an amazing Discord that I've joined not too long ago as a personal experience, where I found Mushu, where my partner is, and where you can find your partner also. But we also have other tips and tricks that revolve around outside of these resources. So for example, we've showed you a lot of clips today, but this is something you could do on your own time as well, to listen to the Overwatch League, but not only just for the action, to just listen to how the the casters, the professionals, are breaking down the action, how they're setting up, and what the color is, and how in depth they go, or maybe they're noticing something in a play that you wouldn't have talked about. And it's okay to have different perspectives on how you would say something or what action you would rather talk about, but just to start getting to know what style and what inspiration you can find from listening to other people. And this is where building a word list can be very interesting too. So maybe you're someone that, this can expand your vocabulary also. Maybe you're somebody that repeats a lot of the same sentences or the same words. This can get repetitive. So start building a word list like with synonyms, something like he's able to get a kill, or brings out the Dragon Blade, the sushi up the other team, like just whatever that can add creativity to what you're casting as entertainment to the broadcast. So having a word list, I have my own. Maybe some people don't like that. They read a lot of books. I don't read a lot of books, so I need a word list to start being a little creative. So next point is determining your role. So of course, when you're going to be beginning, you're going to be trying out color, analysis, play-by-play, whatever. See what you like, what you're comfortable. Are you the hype person? Are you the more knowledgeable, able to extract the information? Whatever your strength is, just try and hone in on that role of color or play-by-play. And of course, you want to be comfortable with both in case you end up with a co-caster that is also a play-by-play or also a color. So good to be flexible, but eventually determine your role and focus on that. And then we've already highlighted how important it is to find a partner and practice with them for the many reasons of honing in on your strengths, your weaknesses, building a relationship with them so you can joke around and be funny and comfortable with them. But also that every branded caster has their partner that they practice with and that they brand themselves with on streams. So you can eventually find someone. I mean, when you're beginning, you're going to be casting with a lot of different people to get your feel on things. But when you find someone that you really gel with, that you actually enjoy casting with, that says actually great things and you can have fun with, that's the person you want to partner with. Don't have, because you don't want casting to just be a job or something that's something you got to do for money or whatever. It's got to be fun to you, or else you're not going to continue to do it. So that's a great way to enhance the fun in a cast, is to enjoy who you're doing it with. And then finally, the most important part is VOD review. This is important because sometimes you might, sometimes you might repeat or do something in a cast that you might not notice in the moment. Whether it's, like I said, repeating something, coughing into the mic like I do, but I'm aware of this one. But some people like hum into the mic or breathe into the mic, or something that, like I said, you don't notice. You're able to discuss that with your co-cast, or even just notice it for yourself. Wow, what I said there was really dumb. It sounded really smart at the moment, and it comes out dumb. I get a lot of those moments, and it's very, very important to review what you did and to set goals and expectations on how to improve. So it's not just, well, sometimes it could be as simple as, I want to have a cohesive sentence. That might be your first goal as a new caster, is I want to say a complete, intelligent sentence. Doesn't matter if it's a good handoff, a good pickup, or anything. Start small and then go bigger. For example, me and Mushu still have goals and expectations today. We're working on handoffs and pickups, improving on that. And every time you VOD review, you pick something that you want to do. Like, hey, I'm repeating something dumb like sushi a lot. Like the Dragon Blade sushiing up the other team. I say that a lot. So if my co-caster knows I'm saying something, I write it down. So not only do you want to VOD review, but you want to revisit those points at your next cast with that person. So hey, because you're gonna maybe forget a week from now what you suck at or what you want to improve at or whatever. So at the next time me and Mushu cast, we'll be like, hey, what's our goals here? We want to improve on pickups, so we're gonna focus on that thing and make sure we're self-aware during the cast. So these are things to enhance and improve very quickly. And also, yes, you're going to hate your own voice listening to it, but the more you hate it, the more you'll want to improve. So those are your tips of the day.
Yeah, I think the last point is important because that's something that I hear from almost everybody when they're starting, especially also vocalists as well. Like when you're singing and then you hear yourself, you're like, oh my God, wait, I sound like that. Right? Just understand that it is a good thing that you feel that way because, like Lemon said, it will push you to improve and try to figure out what you have to do in order to be okay with the sound of your voice. So,
looks some questions in the chat of what warm-up exercises you like to do before cast. So I'll answer this, and then you can answer what exercises you do. I started doing more breathing exercises because I'm coming off of a flu, so I like to put my arms in the air and take a very, very deep breath, and then hold it and then let it out. So this really stretches your lungs and gets your vocal cords nice and stretched out. So you can look up breathing exercises on YouTube and stretch out your lungs and your diaphragm and everything to warm up for cast, for example. Oh, and caffeine helps too.
Yeah.
So Mushu, do you have any thing you want to add?
It was interesting note. I saw some good discussion in the chat on the Discord about caffeine, and so I think you have to understand how your body reacts to caffeine and understand if it's okay for you to have that within a cast. So I drink coffee every day, unfortunately, so I need caffeine like during the day. And so that means that like if not, I'll be super groggy. But I know for some people that'll amp them up a lot, and then that means that they have to drink a lot of water, and then have to use the restroom. So as long as you want to make sure that you understand how caffeine affects you and work around that. And if it's something that if you have a small bladder, you can't, like you're in the middle of a cast and you need to pee, that's not a good place to be. So it's better to be a little bit tired versus having to leave in the middle of the broadcast.
And also any sort of, like I've already kind of talked to you guys about the checklist, all the information you should gather before your match, talk with your co-caster, maybe even those, was it pronunciation like exercises, like seashells by the seashore.
Yeah,
I don't know
twisters.
if you're one of those people that maybe stutter a little bit or kind of screw up words like I do. Words are hard sometimes. So any sort of vocal, breathing, or pronunciation exercises are good. I like to kind of get hyped up and listen to a good song, maybe dance around and jump around, just to get yourself kind of loosened up and energetic, either with caffeine or jumping around. So it's up to you what you kind of want to ramp up. If you want to get focused, or if you want to get hyped up, or if you want to focus on your vocals, whatever. There's different things you can do.
And yeah, it's the tongue twisters is what you're talking about with she sells seashells but down by the seashore. Haha. And so those are great too. I think in terms of warm-ups, what I'm probably going to start doing as well is write out a mini script that I can read out and kind of make sure that I'm enunciating well and that I'm not stumbling on my words too. And the posture for me is a big part too. So I want to make sure that when I'm set up to do the broadcast, that I'm not leaning way back, that I'm able to breathe and make sure that I'm able to project into the microphone and hear that sound too. So that's definitely what I do in the beginning, but I definitely want to do more warm up in the future. So we do have another question. I think we have a couple, but I think this is a really good one. Do you feel low MMR/low rank player can still color cast? I would say so. I think, yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Lemon?
I think that your technical skill has nothing to do with your knowledge of the game. As a gold/plat player myself, I feel like I'm able to extract the information, and you're not necessarily saying like, oh, in this situation, I would do this. No one wants to hear plat chat and what you think you would do.
Yeah.
You want to try and extract what was important, and if you doubt your own opinion, then don't say what they shouldn't have done. Try and focus on what worked, because that's very obvious and everyone can agree. Well, that was very good Dragon Blade, very good Dragon Blade. That's something everybody can agree on. So if you're someone who maybe isn't completely knowledgeable, stay away from the criticizing, maybe. What are your thoughts on that, Moosh?
Yeah, there are people who are analysts and who break down games and in traditional sports, and they're really bad at it, right? I think exactly what you said, mechanical skill and game knowledge are completely two different things. So, of course, game knowledge goes into what your MMR is, but I think a lot of it definitely is the execution too. So don't fret. Just study the game, listen to cast. You can learn so much by watching the pros cast, especially when Monty and Doa are casting. They bring in so much outside knowledge about the players, and then about breaking down what's important. That's what they do so well. They're probably one of the easiest listening casting pairs that is out there for esports. You can just listen to it and you'll just absorb the information that you need to know in that moment. And a lot of it is around game mechanics, cooldowns, the abilities, canceling each other out, timings. That's what they really do well.
Yeah, I think you hit it right there. It doesn't have to be about what the play is. It can be about positioning, what hero comps are run on most maps, things that are pretty common knowledge. Of course, you want to, like you already said, to watch the pros and see how in depth they go into, and I think it doesn't hurt to try and have an anticipation for something. Unless if you're saying something dumb like, "Oh, they should play Symmetra," then like you might get a couple like eyebrows for that. But saying like suggesting a change out of a team, it's your job to criticize. And the worst case scenario, someone doesn't agree with you, then you work on that game knowledge. So
yeah, and the VOD review will answer that question too. That maybe you get a question in chat, because if you're streaming on Twitch too, when you're watching the VOD, the chat will show up too. And so you can see people calling you out for better or for worse. Unfortunately, you really have to develop a tough skin for Twitch chat. Honestly, that's actually another recommendation too. Is that if you are just getting started and you are for some reason in a really toxic chat who's watching you, just turn it off. Like, don't look at it during the broadcast. It will throw you off. It will throw you off. I almost want to have people experience that so they understand to never do it. Right. It should happen to you once in like in a low risk situation, and then yeah, because it can really throw you off. Lemon, I don't know if you've ever had had an experience with Twitch chat that like threw off your mentality.
It's so bad. I had my very first event where, of course, I was new, so I did like super bad. But I looked at Twitter just because I'm like looking at Twitter, and it was just like bashing to the point where I got so upset. I was like, my whole hype was gone. I think I pretty much cried. So sometimes it can really upset people depending if you're sensitive to criticism maybe at the beginning. And if you think you did bad, then you see people call you bad, and it's even more of a downer. So I've always never looked at chat during any cast, and I'll accept constructive criticism afterwards. But there's no point of looking at the chat. It's rarely ever a good thing.
Yeah, and unless there's some mod going through and be like, oh, all the good stuff. Here's all the good things they're saying about you. So another question here from Super Marty Bros. How do you handle recovering from failure, like starting to go Rap God and lose the fight? Do you try to rein it in or hand it off and let color take over?
That's an interesting question.
I think I can tell you how I feel on that. When I am losing, like say I lose my train of thought, or that I'm making a point and I can't get the words out. I don't know if this is the best strategy, but I will finish what I'm saying and hand off as confidently as possible. And then off camera, I'll be like shaking my head, Vic. Like, no. But then just reset. Like, gotta listen. Can't dwell on it, right? You have to listen to what the next person, what your co-caster starts talking about, so you can jump right back in.
Yeah, I think it's good, like you said, to hand off as soon as the opportunity calls for it if you don't have a train of thought. I've also spoken earlier about vocal elements and pacing. You don't want to go Rap God because you're feeding more information in a small amount of time. That means a lot of brain processing power. And also the fact that you shouldn't go Rap God because viewers might not be able to process all that information themselves. So if you don't know what you're talking about, use pacing and fluency to your advantage. So slow down your sentence almost as turtily as possible. Like I said, it's better to have a slower pace than 1,000 verbal fillers to fill in that empty air. So something like, well, I think they're going to go to the high ground and execute this. See how it's like, I'm talking extremely slow and I have no idea what I'm talking about, but it's better than, well, I think they're like going, I think to the high ground. And so one sounds slightly better than the other, but pacing, it allows you to regroup your thought and maybe save yourself in the middle of this explosion nuke of a casting that you're doing. Or you can try and find and then maybe even think of a moment to hand off during that slower pacing. So I like to kind of slow down my pacing if I feel like I'm butchering something and either try and save it or hand off immediately.
Yeah, I guess I would have sometimes I enjoy going Rap God, but don't go Rap God for the sake of going Rap God. And I think that's what Lemon's point is. Remember that you need to be clear. So if it's something that you want to have as part of your repertoire, don't do it all the time. if you're doing it, do it at choice moments when you're trying to increase the hype. VOD review that, get feedback on it, make sure that people can understand what's going on. Don't do it for the sake of just doing it.
Any other questions?
Let's see here. I think I did see another one. Okay, we're just caffeine discussion. I thought I saw something else. Cool. Yeah, I don't see any other question. Oh, okay. Leg Day, he said words that you say that newcasters rely most on. I'll just show this real quick. I have a post-it that I just took off the top of my monitor. I have 5 words here. Down, interesting, here, there, now. These are words that I have trouble with. I say all the time, and these are my focal fillers. So as soon as I went away from saying as much, or trying to reduce the amount I'm saying the vocal fillers are going to other words. And so this is my reminder to myself, these are the things I need to eliminate from my vocabulary, or just use it less, so that when you are saying now, it's not repeated and it has significance, so it can like flip a situation. As this team, as they approached, they had no chance of staying together because of the way that the dive split them up. But now you can see that they're switching compositions here to death ball. Hopefully they'll stay together better this time. So yeah, if you're repeating words a lot, they lose significance, and then people will pick up on it too, especially Twitch chat.
I think what a lot of new casters struggle with is having a cohesive sentence come out of their mouth. And it sounds, I don't want it to come off the wrong way, but just knowing what to talk about during all the action. What do I talk about? When do I talk about it? Is it smart to talk about this? I've always told casters at the beginning to start with color. Like, let an experienced person go through the action as a color. What did you think about what just happened? If you can look at a video and have a cohesive thought about what you just saw, then you're starting to begin the foundations of casting. So I think new casters need to rely on building a cohesive sentence. And then once they're able to get words out and a flow going on, then you'll have repetitions come up because of crutch words such as here, there. I think I have a bunch. I used to say completely all the time. They're completely going to wipe this. All this completely is devastating for the team. I just say completely so much. Again, it's using post-it notes and being self-aware of things like that.
I agree with that. And looks like there's one more question too, and even get an Avril in chat. Guys, give a shout out to Avril. He's doing the Open Division Pacific, I believe. I think I was confused because he's an OCE caster, but he's doing Pacific, I believe. But anyways, so Ham Tornado is asking, if you're sending a VOD, sending VODs for feedback, what's a polite length to send? Do you clip it? Do you send the whole thing? This is something that I think we need to, this is something we actually don't know 100% the answer. I think clips are easier to view, but then having a whole map, as Avril's mentioning, is what he recommends, is definitely a good place to start. And if you are sending a clip, make sure that you're like starting the giving the URL, whatever it needs, so that you're starting at a specific spot too, to where you're starting talking. That some people have been doing that in the Discord, and it's been really great. You can just click on it. That first voice that you hear is that person. So you don't have to worry about like, is this guy you? Is this other person you?
Right. And I think another thing, like either you can send the whole map and be like, how is my performance? Or you can maybe send like a 2 pickup handoff, like maybe a 1-minute clip of a back and forth to say something specific. Am I addressing the right thing at this moment? Is this pickup solid? Am I picking up what my co-caster is saying? Is this awkward? Am I hype enough here? Am I repeating? Am I dull? Like whatever specific thing you're worried about, you can also address it directly. I know a lot of the times me and Musha will try and clip handoffs and pickups and focus on, well, was this really smooth or was this not? And we might want to, and I've sent those clips of handoffs and pickups to people where I'm like, how could I have said it better in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're at that point in your casting where you're just working on polish, sometimes you can just send a piece and be like, could I have said this better? Or how would you have done this moment, just for feedback? So you can, like Avril maybe wants the whole map, or some people will have more specific moment questions.
Great. I think that's an answer to that, and I don't see any other questions in chat. But anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I know I had a lot of fun on the second go around here. We did our EU earlier, but now we're getting our cams in there, and really solidifying just as people are starting. There's a lot to take in and a lot of information, so hopefully this is helpful for you.
And the VOD will be up, and I believe we'll have articles and videos, whatever, coming out. So if you missed it halfway, if you want to review it, ask any more questions, we are available and lots of resources available if you have more questions or want to see this again.
And the VOD will be available pretty much immediately after this if you go into past broadcasts. Then, of course, just make sure, hopefully the internet was good enough to capture our voice and the audio and the video on the screen. So thanks, guys, for your patience in working through that. We have a late question here. I might as well throw it in. I guess we're about to sign off, but then we'll just do that later. Let's see here. I come from the Rocket League scene. So this is Badgie. How's it going, Badgie? And produced several tournaments, but I'm still a little green to Overwatch. Are there any applicable or transferable skills when casting different games? Yeah, for sure. What do you think?
As coming from someone from Call of Duty, there's games that transfer well, and then there's games that don't transfer well. Like maybe if you come from League, you might understand chaotic team fights and how to process that information, versus someone like me who comes from COD where it's action all the time. So there's going to be elements of play-by-play and color in every game you're going to get. It's the flow and the bounce back between the two that are going to change for every game. So, for example, in Call of Duty, there'll be ramp-ups of action and then lots of moments of dullness and setup because they'll be resetting and respawning. While as Overwatch, there's a lot of action and a little bit of reset, action, and then action. So maybe something like Rocket League, I don't watch it that much, but I know that can be a lot of action-packed thing. So knowing when there's a moment for color and play-by-play, I think, are the main transferable things. And you can apply your casting style to any game, but mainly the game knowledge is going to be extremely different. So that's your huge hurdle switching games from there.
I think in the way that the position of the map, on the field that the cars are and where the ball is, you can recognize very quickly with the game knowledge what is about to happen. And so you're using the same skills, excuse me, you're using the same skills of the setup to give you an understanding about when is there going to be action, right? And so in the same way, in the same way you're recognizing when the action's about to start, Overwatch, you're doing the same thing. It's just about learning the game. And especially with how little information there is in the grand scheme of things that's on the screen at one time, especially when you're doing first-person view, it's the challenge is understanding instantaneously once an action happens, how is it going to affect the team fight? So again, it's about studying the game, being very diligent about what Lemon was saying about how when you're checking your mirrors when you're driving, you should be checking it every 5 seconds or so, right? There's some rules that people have set that are good baselines of how you should be approaching watching your driving in this, your surroundings. It's the same thing in Overwatch too. And so that's one of the big challenges that you'll probably have coming from Rocket League. But I think coming from any game, understand what your strengths are as a caster and then carry that forward. And really it goes for anybody. When you're a caster, you will be remembered for your strengths and your weaknesses. So make sure people understand and can see your strengths a lot more than anything that you will have a weakness on. Because for you to be memorable, you need to have something that people really say, wow, that person was really X.
Yeah, I think if you come from a different game, you already have a huge casting toolkit. So it'll just be to apply the game knowledge that you're going to get, maybe alter your casting style a little bit. But you've already got a tremendous experience coming from another game. So just transferring the setup, team fight, breakdown should be pretty easy for you.
Agreed. Coolio.
I guess we can sign off now.
Alrighty. Well, thanks guys so much for tuning in. This has been the Overwatch Shoutcasting Foundations workshop. This has been Mushu. That has been Lemon Kiwi. And you can find the VODs online on the past broadcasts. And then you can find us if you want to get in touch with us. You can shoot us a tweet on Twitter. Find us in the Discord as well. just go to the link if you just go to Broadcast.gg, there'll be a link at the top of that page. But thanks again, guys, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.